I hope everyone had a great week and you're holding up okay in the midst of all of this. Thanks for joining me this morning at 10:02 a.m. We're going through our 5 practices of peace that we believe will draw you closer to God, but also send you deeper into the world. Those 5 practices are pause, eat, ask, commune, and examine. And today we're looking at the practice of asking. But before we do that, I hope you were able to spend this week to find 1 or 2 very small steps that you could take towards the practice of pausing, the keeping of the Sabbath. We also had a great question and answer last Thursday night where people were asking very practical questions about how do you implement this realistically and sustainably in their life, but also during this time of shelter in place. So I hope you're able to make 1 or 2 steps last week to move towards pause. So why is eat a spiritual practice? If you look throughout the entire Bible, actually, the spiritual significance of meals, of eating food, of sharing hospitality in that manner is actually tremendously important. You look at even from the very beginning of Adam and Eve, the first sin is a sin of hunger, of desire, of eating. You go throughout the story of Israel, Passover, of course, is a meal where they remember the deliverance of God. In the New Testament, the central sacrament that Jesus gives in the life of the church is the Lord's Supper. It's a sharing of a meal. And Jesus, of course, in his earthly ministry, maybe did more ministry over food than in any other context. And so there is a deeply spiritual reality that happens whenever we share a meal, and maybe even some of your most vivid memories might be over meals that you shared where you just experienced something transcendent, a love and a joy that was there. And so, eating for all of us, we experience it to have a certain spiritual significance. Now, when we talk about the practice of eating as a second practice of peace, what exactly are we saying there? What I try to encourage people to do is every week to say that I'm going to spend 2 meals, and maybe it's not a meal. Sometimes it could be just a coffee or a tea. It could be a drink after work in the evenings, but 2 meals or a beverage that I'm going to be intentional about reaching out to somebody in my life, to open up my life to them, and also to learn more and learn more about them as well. And so, in these 2 meals a week, it could be a quick lunch. It could be, like I said, a coffee or a tea. Um, just use that time to take the conversation to maybe what I would call a spiritual conversation beyond maybe the ordinary things that we're used to talking about, but to be able to have these meals as opportunities to connect at a deeper level. Next week, we're going to be talking about the spiritual practice of asking. We'll talk a little bit more about how to do that. But 2 meals or 2 drinks, or during this time of shelter in place, a meal or a drink maybe isn't possible. Although I will want to challenge you, one of the things that I've done is I've done a weekly happy hour with other people in my building as a way to deepen friendships and relationships here. And we've continued that practice into this quarantine. So we have every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Happy hour, and we've continued to meet, and it's been actually an amazing time where we've had great conversations. But 2 meals per week, can you be intentional about one of them at least being somebody who doesn't share your faith, someone who doesn't yet know the hope of the gospel, the peace, the shalom of God that's available to anyone in Jesus Christ? And so think about virtual meals. Reach out to people, ask them if they want to get together to have a meal, to have a drink, even over Zoom. A second thing to do is to think maybe what if I swap out virtual meals with just acts of kindness? That during this time it might be hard to get together for food, but can I think about 2 ways that I can act in a way of unexpected kindness to the people around me? So one of the things that we do as a family is every weekday at 4 p.m. we do something called For the World, just an easy way to remember it, where we all pause, and every day at 4 p.m. our alarm goes off and we get together and we just do one kind thing. It could be as simple as a text, checking in on somebody. Our kids will sometimes draw cards for, let's say, the people who work in our building during this time. Are there 2 ways that you can do that as an expression of this practice of eating? So this week, think about that. What's realistic? What's sustainable for you? Make it concrete. The reason I put a number to that meal so that by the end of the week, you know when you've done it or not. But how can we recover the spiritual significance of eating, especially in a culture that tends to make everything very pragmatic? The power lunch in New York City has been replaced by powering through lunch. Can we recapture the spiritual and relational significance of eating? So try that this week. Come join us on Thursday evening for a Q&A to talk more about what this might look like. And I hope that as you incorporate these practices in your life, you do find yourself drawing closer to God's peace in Jesus, but also being intentionally sent out into the world to offer that peace to others. So thanks for joining today.